Well, we use the scientific method to learn about phenomena. The idea behind learning about phenomenon is, first of all, we learn about them. That means that we can describe them.
For example, you might describe the characteristic of moderate to vigorous physical activity. That is, how much moderate to vigorous physical activity in met minutes per week or total minutes per week of physical activity in which people engage. You could describe that for a sample and infer to a population.
So once we describe a phenomenon, then sometimes we want to move on to being able to predict them.
We often use BMI as a measure of body composition characteristics, so you're predicting BMI from measured weight and height.
After being able to predict, the next level is to be able to try to control phenomenon.
And clearly there's much research that indicates as if you control your diet, that'll have influence upon what your weight might be. So you're controlling diet to influence weight and ultimately health outcomes.
And finally, the object is to explain why and how phenomenon occur.
So in this example, there are many benefits of engaging in physical activity, such as controlling your weight and combating health conditions and diseases, improving mood, and so forth. So what occurs as a result of you engaging in physical activity, and what's the explanation for why those positive benefits occur?
Now, what type of reasoning is used in scientific method? One type of reasoning is called inductive reasoning, and this is the type of reasoning that is commonly used in statistical experiments. For example, we select a small sample from a population, and we measure and experiment on that sample, and what we learn, we infer to the general population from which that sample came. So we move from a small group to the population. In deductive reasoning, we move from observation of a large number of phenomenon and try to reduce it down to a small theory. So the idea of theories uses deductive reasoning. What we do with the scientific method is we conduct experiments to learn as much as we can about phenomena.
Recall the recent example about the javelin training methodologies. We want to study the phenomenon of how far you can throw the javelin, and we want to see if that's related to the training method. So we conduct an experiment.
In a nutshell, the scientific method involves gathering data in an objective and organized manner to be able to make informed decisions about the interactions among variables. So the steps to the scientific method are, first of all, asking why. Remember, what we're going to try to do is to explain why a phenomenon occurs. So we start with the question why. Why does physical activity have beneficial health results?
You come up with a hypothesis then that there is this relationship. So you design an experiment, and you have some people engage in a certain amount of physical activity and other people engage in different amounts of physical activity. Or some people train with the javelin one way, other people train in a separate way. And then you
collect data. This means usually finding the mean performance for each of your groups, and you compare those means to make a decision. And the decision might be that the means are not significantly different from each other, verifying the null hypothesis, or you may decide that the means are so far apart that it can't just be chance, and it must be that your treatment was responsible for the means being so far apart. An example would be, it was noticed that participation in physical exercise seemed to be beneficial for preventing health problems. So many studies were done to determine the viability of this relationship and to control health outcomes based on physical exercise treatments. And finally, to determine some of the explanations for this positive relationship. For example, some of the possible reasons might be reduction of plaque in the arteries, improved heart strength, reduction of stress, increase in the number of capillaries, and so on.